All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to be starting our fifth episode, believe it or not, of the Fuel Up series webinar. This week, we're going to be walking through the switch to AI with Juniper and Maldonado. Juniper Landscapes based out of Fort Myers, Florida, and Maldonado Nursery and Landscape based out of San Antonio, Texas. Two great firms, and we've got two great panelists on our webinar today. I'll ask them to introduce themselves in just a minute, but just wanted to outline our agenda for today and give a couple housekeeping items. So we're going to spend a good 25-30 minutes talking through the switch to AI. Both Juniper and Maldonado have made that switch. And so we're going to talk about estimating without AI. We're going to talk about the switch, some things to consider. And then we're also going to talk about success and what are some success factors that they've experienced and some ways to think about the switch as you decide to mull that over as well as we walk into the future. A couple housekeeping items, like I mentioned, we've got two polls that are going to be popping up through our session. Please make sure to interact with those, and we'd love it if you engaged with us that way. Then also throughout the entire webinar, you'll be able to put into the chat any questions that you might have as well. So we'll be taking and collecting those questions as we go throughout the webinar, and then post the conversation with both Jeremy and Mark. We're going to have a little Q&A session, so you'll be able to ask both of our panelists today any specific questions that you might have from the content that we'll actually be covering. So with that, Mark, I'll ask you to introduce yourself first. Give us a little bio, and welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Shawn. My name is Mark Michalek. I'm the Director of Business Services here at Juniper Landscaping. How it relates to this is I oversee our entire estimating process from the ground up, we'll call it. So I've been with the Juniper for 3 years. I've been in the industry in different types of roles, not specifically landscaping, for about 12 years. I've been on the AI platform for, I think, now 2.5 years. So been here since you guys first really released it. I think it was one of your initial customers. So it's been great to see where it started to where it comes from, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we go.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you. I appreciate that. Been here since the beginning, so that's awesome. We appreciate you. All right, Jeremy, I'll flip it over to you. You can click off mute there and introduce yourself, and we should be good.
Cool. So my name is Jeremy Charo. I've been at Maldonado for about 4 years now. This was actually my first job in landscape, so full 4 years. Right now, my title is a special projects manager, and that kind of came about because I came in estimating, started taking out a bunch of little side projects here and there, just trying to be helpful everywhere. And we couldn't find a single title for me, so we were just like, all right, special projects, that's you. So it's been fun. I've been using the AI software for a little over a year now, more or less, somewhere in there. It's been crazy. It's really cool, like Mark was saying, to see the development from the time that we came in to where it is now.
Awesome. That's great, Jeremy. I appreciate that intro. Great. Well, let's hop into it, fellas. Jeremy, I want to stay with you here on maybe our first topic, and really it's talking about estimating without AI essentially. So what did the process look like before you guys switched over, and how were you initially estimating?
So when I first got in, we were just discovering GoIlon, which is really good software, really uniquely detailed, but very time consuming for those of you who have used it. Majority of my time was spent doing GoIlon for the most part. I think when I first came in and I started learning, I was putting in maybe 60, 70 hours, and I was just straight manual measurements the entire time. At that time, there was still someone here who was going out with the measuring wheel. So a little bit variation of some things. Everything was just very time consuming overall. Even when we were measuring on plans, they showed me the digitizer like my first day here, and I was like, well, I don't even know what this is. Like it's crazy to see. And when I was doing stuff on the computer, I was using like PDF Exchange and hovering over each of the measurements to add them up on an Excel sheet. So it's really crazy to see the progress from then to now.
Yeah, on those, it sounds like you had quite a few different maybe applications, even the measuring wheel being one of the manual applications as well. Did any integrations that you were using at the time, or was everything kind of siloed and separate, or how did the workflows go there?
Yeah, I mean, everything was still broken up. like I was saying, even with the PDF exchange, like there wasn't a way to like total that up. So it was using one program to measure it, one program to add it up, and another program to estimate it. There's just a lot of different things to learn, especially being new to the industry where everything was still new.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess on the accuracy side, right? Like I know my experience. There's a wheel. There was, some manual clicking, right? There was some, dare I say, thumb in the air as well. How would you say your accuracy was, back before the switch, essentially?
I think the best way to describe it is inconsistent, right? You have some people that were super particular about the measurements they were taking. Other people kind of rushed through it. And then sometimes those people that were really particular had really terrible handwriting. So to try to transfer that into an accurate estimate was difficult to say the least.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then in regards to like, so I know you guys are based in Texas, but I think, even though you're in an evergreen market, right, just such as is market, right, in Florida as well, even though you're in a evergreen market, I know there's some peaks and valleys to the seasonality there.
For sure.
You know, talk to me about like peak season, right? Like the quick requests. How were you handling those? Prior to any automation built into the platform? Like, what kind of walk me through what that looked like, the timelines you were up against, and
Sure.
any details there.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I mean, the time was just, it always varied, right? It depended on the size of the job, the complexity of it, stuff like that. And it was really hard to help as many people as I wanted to because I had to take priority with everything. I could only click so fast. And at the time, I was a one-man show. So no matter how fast or how good I got, there was always going to be jobs that were left behind. There were turnarounds that people asked for that were legitimate leads, that were very qualified leads that we could probably land the job. But I was already in the middle of something that I had already spent a week on already, and to let that one fall because I had to go to this one, it was really difficult. Um, and so we have 5 branches throughout Texas, and in Houston, we still deal with this today, where everything is real quick, everything is last minute, and everything is like, I'm giving it to you Wednesday at 5, and I need it back by Friday at 8 a.m. And it was wild. So to be able to use AI and kind of push multiple things at once for one, it's like having a team of estimators always. It makes it really simple.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that insight there, Jimmy. That's good. No, I think things can get, they can get tight from a customer, right? From a timeline perspective, any time of the year. Like, I think
Right.
about like when a contractor falls down on a property and they need to make a switch mid-season, usually that's a quick pivot, but
Yeah.
especially in peak seasons, things can get really tight. Mark, I want to get your feedback here a little bit on this topic as well, just from like a pre-switch, right? Perspective essentially. But we've got a little poll here we're going to pull up and would love the audience to interact here with it. How many hours do you spend every week on manual site measurements? So less than 3 to 6, more than 6 hours per week, or I automate my site measurements. So we'll leave that up for a minute. You can certainly engage with us there. Mark, in regards to kind of the same structure with Jeremy there, timing wise, kind of talk us through like how you were initially estimating back in the day, we'll call it.
Yeah, so like Jeremy said, we were on Go Island when I started here. So, but only half of our team was using it. So we were still using, as you referred to, thumb in the air uh, estimates. We were sending a guy out to look at a job. We used to call him Rain Man because he'd be like, "You need 1,000 hours to do this, 37.2 hours to do this," and he was genuinely good. He's been doing it for 30 years. But that, like you said, leads to inaccuracies all over the place because if you have, let's say, you have 4 different people doing that, well, that's 4 different people's opinions from driving around a
Mhm.
community and looking at it. But similar to Jeremy, I started and used to sit in an office. And if for those of you that never use Go Ilon, you're basically drawing polygons all day long. You're just clicking away.
Yeah.
Every click draws the lines and connects the dots. And we used to sit there and joke because when you're doing it and you're working, you're just clicking away. And I used to have a coworker that was on the sales team that used to wait until I'd be like 2 or 3 hours into a project and then would say, "Hey Mark, do you know how your clicking is kind of annoying?" And then for literally the next half an hour, you hear every click that you do. So we did it that way. And it is a ton of clicking because you're literally drawing an entire property. And while you can get pretty accurate with that, at the end of the day, we were using between 2 and 3 estimators, and everybody's accuracy was a little bit different. How you draw the polygons, and basically the software takes the polygon and gives you a square footage. And if you do it how you should with zooming in and getting real accurate, you were pretty close. But if you were trying to rush a job, you just do the highest, basically the highest scale that you could, and just click across, and you could get an accurate. So it led us to kind of be all over the place. And then when we kind of made the switch to AI, kind of, as Jeremy said, it allowed us to not be stuck on one project. Because if let's say we have 1,000-acre project, well, that's 1,000 acres that we have to sit there and click through. And if you get an emergency, like, well, now I got to switch to this and stop doing that. And your productivity, you were one job at a time until you were done. So we were kind of in the same boat with the Go Island. While it can get the job done, the amount of horsepower you need behind that to keep up with the scale, it's just not possible to do with unless you have a dozen estimators, which at that point you're increasing your spend for low probability work.
Yeah, no, that's great insight there, Mark. How did it affect like I'm thinking you covered accuracy, but like missed opportunities during peak season or crunch time turnaround times, right? I know you're obviously in an evergreen market there in Florida, but obviously there's some peak contractual times that I think come up and ebb and flow with the season there in Florida. Any specifics there?
Yeah, and during bid season, I mean, there's days where I'm sitting here from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed trying to get projects done. And if we miss deadlines, we would just refuse to bid. Like if we got something on a Wednesday and it was due on Friday in peak season, there was no chance that was ever getting done. Either we're throwing a number into the wind, which is, in my opinion, not a great business decision, which we eventually got away from, just because it became like, why are we just going to make up a number and pull that out of the thin air, when if it's 2-day turnaround, it is what it is. We would pass on the opportunities just because there wasn't enough horsepower behind it to get it done.
Yeah, I see maybe two issues there too, right? Like you're throwing a number into the wind, so there's some risk, right? If you didn't account for everything on the property, you could be underbidding, and obviously you may have a good chance of getting the job just on price, which is never a good thing. And then obviously the typical qualifying questions, right? Like, are you going to meet with me? Do you have a site map? Will you talk through scope with me? Essentially, those are like the things like that I think about. And I know the timing during peak season was always like a disqualifier for me when I was in the business, right? Like if you need it in 2 days or you need it tomorrow, I can't do that. It's physically impossible. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. This helps remove that as a blocker potentially from your pipeline.
Yeah, the way we used to verify it, if the contractor walked off the job, that would be something that we would rush. If you were calling me on Wednesday and you had a current contractor and they were going to continue bidding and you needed it Friday, we would pass on that, because obviously there's not a good quality lead there.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point for everybody like that's in attendance, right? Like that's a fantastic question. Like, back to your individual, right? Like I know we're talking about the measurement side of thing and speed to market, but taking a pause and asking that question of like, if you're changing contractors, why are they going to be participating as well, right? In the process was always like a key indicator or litmus test to find that out. I think that's great feedback there. Awesome. Well, good. I just want to like our first section here, right? Estimating without AI. Just want to summarize some key takeaways, right, that we've talked through so far. Is time spent away from selling, right? If you've got a business developer out there measuring in any capacity, there's definitely some better use of their time on actually being in front of individuals rather than measuring properties. We talked a little bit about accuracy, low win rate due to inaccuracy. So being able to get things done quickly is important, but being able to get them done accurately is obviously just as important. We beat this to death a little bit, missed opportunities during the peak season and slow turnaround of bids. I know one thing on this slow turnaround of bids, I always think of our profession, right? We're masters of first impressions. That's what we help our customers with. Whenever any of customers of our customers come into their place, our work that we do is the first thing they see. And so when we have to turn down bids or ask for extensions, that doesn't give us the best first impression with our companies as well. So want to just summarize some of the bottlenecks, right, that we're talking through today. I want to move over, and maybe I'll stay with you, Mark, here on like the actual switch, right? So technology and software, I mean, in the whole scope of the landscape industry is fairly new. It's not something that's been around forever. I think it's a great thing. I think it's gaining momentum. We've got conferences around it. We've got people talking about it more. But I know there can be, some doubts when you're switching over to a different software platform, but also if it's got AI in the name, right? That's very cutting edge as well. So, maybe walk me through some of your, before you made the switch, any big fears or concerns that you had before you actually made the switch?
The biggest concern I would say wasn't necessarily from myself. It was more from the operations team, trying to get people that have been in the industry for 15, 20, 30, 40 years, have always done it one way. Go out with a wheel, go out, stick your thumb up, getting them to buy into the fact that, hey, we're going to let a computer measure, we're going to apply our production rates that we trial in the field, and it's going to spit out a number. And they look at you like you just, reinvented the wheel. And in reality, we did, but we made it go a lot faster, a lot more accurate, and it allowed us to kind of centralize our estimating system. But getting the buy-in from, and we have in Florida, we have 22 branches, so 22 branch managers, plus all your account managers that are associated with that. And then on top of that, getting the sales team to buy in as well. And like I said, we're majority of our employees have been doing this one way or a handful of ways for a long time. None of which, as you said, AI is fairly new in the landscaping industry. So no one had ever really used it, and getting them to buy into the process and believe that it actually worked. Like I haven't used an example, the guy that we called Rain Man, his name is Tom, and Tom had one way of doing this and done it for 30 years. He was like, there's no way this is right. And literally I challenged him. I was like, you take a wheel, I'm going to use AI. We'll come back and we'll have our numbers. And we did a small area and we were within like 1 or 2% on everything that we did. So we were like almost dead accurate on both. And that's how we got him to buy in on it. Once I got him and I could use him to kind of go through to the other branch managers and says, hey, this is actually works, it got a lot easier. But getting the industry professionals that have been doing this for a while to buy in was probably the biggest challenge.
Okay. No, that's great feedback. The thing I got out of it, right, is like there's hesitation and trust issues with it. But it sounds like you went through a process with Rain Man. I love that, right? That you went through with Tom, like to actually validate the takeoffs essentially, that, and that helped build trust in that process.
Yeah, and our sales team, when I started, we were kind of scattered. No one really, some people used GoIlon and used what we call our estimating department. Some sales teams still did it the same way. But as we talked about in the previous section, having a business developer sit in front of a computer and do a takeoff or go in the field and measure is taking away from their ability to sell. So being able to take that off of their plate allowed us to go out and get more opportunities. So it was kind of a twofold win there.
Nice. No, that's great feedback there, Mark. I guess Jeremy, same thought process. Any issues that you saw, fears, concerns, not just from you, but maybe your team as well when you were kind of walking through the potential switch?
Yeah. So same idea, right? Well, there's two main concerns. And the first one is like you were saying, Mark, it's just the industry as a whole has done the same thing the same way for a very, very long time. And to get some of the people, especially the ones that have been here 15, 20 years and present them with this new idea, it was difficult in the beginning. And even just trying to make the decision to decide to switch or not, like we have to think about those future encounters and how they're going to go and make sure that we even have the possibility of getting that buy-in before we start trying to present it and switching a whole new thing. As you know, the bigger the company is, the bigger deal it is to make a change like that. So that was a part of it. Another thing was the accuracy of it was something that I wasn't sure of. And just like you, Mark, we tested it out. I don't know if you remember, Shawn, but we sent you probably two of the most difficult bids that we were working on at the time. And I was like, all right, here you go. Like, let's see how accurate you get. and it was really, really close. As close to what I could do on GoIlon or anything like that. We went through some of the changes that I need to see in the way stuff was displayed and stuff. And in that time, I was able to build a lot of the trust in the team that was working on those projects. And it kind of made everything easier. And then the last hurdle, I guess, that I had in my mind was, and I'm going to be really open and honest here, was job security, right? So I was coming from a spot where I was the only estimator at that time. So to hear someone come in like, nah, bro, we could do it 2 times faster than you. Like, oh man, what am I gonna do? I sat there and I thought about it for a little bit, and I started thinking about all the other possibilities that I have and everything that I could do with my time if I wasn't stuck at a computer 60 hours a week. Um, and that was the biggest one for me actually. And I'm glad I did it because now that I have that free time, now I have this special projects manager title because I was able to pick up so many other things and help so many people at the same time. So it was really interesting.
That's
To
awesome for me.
piggyback on that, go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Shawn.
Mark. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say to piggyback on that, like that would be from the business side, depending on the size of your company. You know, people get scared when you say computers replacing a human. And we kind of had that same conversation about, well, what do we need estimators for? And then to me, it was like, well, why don't we take our estimators and allow them to do something else? So obviously, in the today's job market, getting good people is one of the biggest challenges in our industry. So being able to reallocate those resources was kind of the way I sold it to my bosses is say, hey, no, we're not just cutting out, 2 heads. We don't need 2 people anymore. Now we have 2 free bodies that have been with us for, 3, 4 years that we now can teach them something else and allow them to grow. So it became basically, yes, you'll say you're cutting out 2 heads, but it gave us 2 additional people that we could use in different resources. So I could see where people get the doubts that, hey, you're replacing, a human job with a computer, but it allowed us to take those people and reallocate them, not necessarily replace them.
Yeah, love the transparency, and I appreciate the authenticity there, Jeremy. That that's a concern, like personally, that when I'm talking with different businesses, we run into a lot. I don't even have this right on my outline, but my next question, just from you guys sharing your thoughts there, is, I'm trying to think from the audience perspective, like, what did you do with that extra time then? Like what did you see as a benefit of how you were saving time from the takeoff side? Maybe Jeremy go first, and then Mark, I'll ask your inputs here as well.
Sure. So a lot of it switched from manually doing those measurements to building systems and processes around uh, having an increase in speed for those things. So I stopped worrying about measuring one individual property and started worrying about like, cool, what is the process for bidding an entire portfolio and multiple branches, um, stuff like that. Some of the time went to training. I was put into estimating initially because it's a good first foot in the door into landscaping in general. You learn so much of every part of the business through just estimating it itself and reviewing your estimates and seeing how accurate you were and stuff like that. I started picking up pieces of production and irrigation and stuff like that. So I started using that time that I would normally spend measuring into building systems and processes and making the company have room for growth as a whole.
Awesome. Great feedback. It sounds like you went from working in the business to working on it in a little bit more of a pivot there.
Yeah.
Mark, how about you?
That's you used the great term. I went from working in the business to working on it. For us, it allowed me to build an entire structure. So we took, 3 estimators and kind of that were doing bouncing around and helping everybody to putting them in what we'll call a central hub, and basically built the system to where all of our sales team now has the entire estimating hub as a whole. So basically we went from measuring, I would say about call it 60% of our jobs to measuring 100% of our jobs, running it through the same estimating system, the same 3 estimators, which is now down to 2, but everything is in that system now. So we rebuilt our sales process to allow estimating to be centralized, and then basically allow our sales team just to sell, and then our processes to basically allow estimating to control it, get it to the branch level, branches approve it, and then the sales team deliver it. So we went from only measuring 60% and having, other sales team, I don't want to say making up estimates because that's underselling what they did, but basically having to put together an estimate for a proposal package. We took that off their plate. We took that off the branch manager's plate and centralized it for the entire company, and then build our processes on top of it. So as you would say, you went from working in the business to working on it. It basically freed my time up and allowed me to grow.
Yeah, great feedback there, Mark. It sounds like you guys also centralized, right, the estimating structure, which I think at if you're a $5 million landscape business, right, centrally orienting, estimating may not be an important component or the most important priority for you.
Yeah.
But as you grow and scale, like Juniper has, right? Like to be able to centralize that so that it not only adds efficiency to it, but you're putting your best people on it. I think that sounds like an important key takeaway as well.
Yeah, 100%. And allowed us to continue to grow and grow at a rate that is, pretty advanced, I will say. And we don't get that
Yeah.
bottleneck, and we talked about earlier, we're not sticking our thumb up. So the bids that we're putting out, we are very confident in our number. We're not worrying about, oh, did we underbid that? My boss isn't coming in a year later saying, we lost money on this job for 12 months. Why? So
yeah, that's a big question right there. And I've been on both ends of it essentially, and it's not fun either side of it for sure.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah, we've cut out the why did we miss this? Why were we off? Why did we bid this? Like we've answered a lot of questions that before we didn't have answers to. Having the data is a huge thing. Before in the past, if you're sticking your thumb up and applying hours to the job, and we'll call those educational guesses, you have no data. At that point, you're just going off of that number. Now I have actual data behind it. It says, well, maybe this crew isn't as fast as our standard crew. Maybe we need to look at additional training there. Having the square footage data and our systems built has allowed us to dig into the business more and find where our weak points are.
Yeah, great takeaways there for anybody considering a change or looking to get some more information on AI. Jeremy, I want to go over to you. Mark mentioned data. I want to talk about some data points, right, specific to like your success with AI so far. Talk me through like hours saved on a weekly or monthly basis, however you guys view that at Maldonado. Any win rate increases from your estimates, just some raw figures or some general ideas about how you guys have seen success with AI.
Yeah. So for sure, the amount of output that we have is exponential growth, right? From going to measuring one thing at a time to being, and we've had times where we had 3 or 4 separate portfolios with 20 properties in each one that needs to be measured, and all of them were sent in and received within the first like week and a half or so, and we were able to bid on every single one of them. So had that been a manual measurement thing, we would have to select, all right, which of these 4 do we want to pursue, and take our chance with that one. In this business, it's all a game of numbers. So the more estimates we put out, the higher likelihood we have of actually winning some of these jobs. So I didn't keep track of our win rate at the time, but I know for sure we've definitely landed more jobs in the last year or so than we have before. And like you were saying, Mark, we're confident in those numbers. We're not winning those jobs because we messed up and we missed something crazy. We're winning them because we're putting out good bids consistently, and we're able to get more of them out in the same amount of time. Our BDs, our business developers, have built a lot more trust with my team. Right now, I have a team of 3 estimators aside from myself, and the business developers can go out and sell as many jobs as they can because they built that faith in us over time. So now they know that if they have a portfolio that has 50 properties and it's due in a couple of weeks, like we can make that work. And there's no way to measure the value of the trust that a business developer has with their estimators. So that's probably the biggest, gain that we've seen from measuring with AI.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and Mark have both mentioned trust in the process, right? Like it's been enhanced, right? You got the trust from the operations team on initiating this through a process of like you measure it, I measure it type of thing, but also like the tension between sales and ops, right, is always there, and I think it can be a positive thing, but it can also be a toxic thing. So it sounds like the business developers have got trust in the estimating and ops team being able to deliver the information back for an estimate to actually go out.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, great. I think we're going to pull up another poll here. Please, feel free to engage, and obviously any questions that you have from what Jeremy and Mark have covered, just go ahead and drop them in the chat. We'll make sure to take care of them in the Q&A section. So this poll, do you want to switch to AI? Feel free to interact there. Mark, kind of same question here from your perspective as well in regards to success metrics. Anything specific come to mind when we think or talk about that?
For us, it just, like I said before, it allows us to measure everything we bid now. And before, your capacity was only, how much, let's just say everybody works 8 hours in a day. If every project takes you 4 hours, what is that? Two a day, it's 10 estimates a week you can put out per estimator. Well, now, like, the best part about having AI is that it can work on multiple jobs at once, and it works 24/7. So you're not waiting. There's real no queue. Like, all your jobs are in progress. As soon as you get it back, your estimators then can clean it, put it in your system, and you're off and running. You're not sitting there for hours on time. It's, in theory, it doesn't reduce, the time it takes to do it. Let's say AI takes 8 hours to measure it. Well, the 8 hours the AI measurement starts as soon as you press start. The 8 hours of a human working on it is 8 hours of a human sitting there at a desk clicking. So for us, it's the efficiency pickup and the capacity that you pick up by allowing your estimators only to spend, let's say the AI does 85% of the work for you. Well, now you're only spending 15% taking that estimate, making sure everything's right, and then uploading it into your system. So instead of being able to work on 2 jobs a day, you're now working on 6 jobs a day. And I'm just making up numbers at that point, but that's where we saw the biggest pickup. And like I said, it allowed us to go from only measuring, say, 60% of our jobs to every single Juniper bid that we put out now has been measured and has data behind it now. So we picked up a ton in that aspect.
Gotcha. It sounds like being able to build the pipeline, right, is certainly, this is no longer a bottleneck to it. One last question as we wrap up, and Jeremy, I want to get your thoughts here first, and then Mark, yours as well. If you were to boil it down to one or two, right, key components when considering a switch, what would be your advice to the audience that's attending? Like, what are the one or two key components when you should consider when making a switch from how you're doing it today to injecting AI into the system?
So I think the time aspect of it is probably the biggest one that people need to consider. Using AI is just so much faster. There's so many more things you can do with that time. You can't match, like Mark, how you were saying, measuring 10 properties at a time as opposed to one, and then the next one, and the next one, and so forth. And that kind of merges into the next one. The next point that you need to look at is the potential of your people, right? If you have estimators sitting there at a desk for all 8 hours a day, not to say that they're wasting their time, but they could be doing so many more things with their time, and it's almost limiting the growth of your individual people in your company, because the more you invest into your people and developing them into bigger and better things, obviously the company is going to grow from that as well. Those are my two main points of what people should consider.
Awesome. Well said. Well said there, Jeremy. Mark, how about you? Same thoughts. One or two key components when making a switch or considering a switch.
Speed and scale would be for me. At our rate of growth, being able to scale up, as we talked about, getting people and getting experienced people is very difficult in the Florida market. It's very competitive. It's very costly. And what AI has allowed us to do is like I said, build that centralized system to where it has increased my scale capacity for estimating. Instead of, let's just say that we're going to do 100 million in estimates. Well, let's say that in the past would take, say, 10 estimators. Now I can do it with 2, and that capacity doesn't get bigger. And it may, we may hit that capacity point, but the ability for AI to measure multiple jobs at once, like I said, our estimators, instead of spending 100% of their time measuring, now we're just spending their time verifying and making sure everything lines up, making sure everything matches the scope of work, and then inputting it. There's no longer sitting time wasting measuring. So it allowed for that personal growth, as Jeremy was talking about. Now, instead of taking an estimator and just having somebody draw polygons all day, they get to learn the business. They get to go to the bid reviews. They get to sit there with the salesperson and talk through the sales process. Like I said, myself, I started as an estimator, and now I run a handful of departments. My current 2 estimators, one is moving into an operations role. The other one's getting promoted into an office manager role. So it allowed for them to grow, because you can take somebody that has no landscaping experience, plug them into a seat, and say, this is all you have to do. You outline the property, you press go. It's going to come back. It's going to spit out all your measurements. All you have to do is upload them. For us, we matched our template to Attentive. So it's made it to where you don't necessarily need a landscape professional to sit in that seat now. You can take somebody that's a hard worker and grow them into an estimator, teach them the business, and then have them move into a different potential role.
That's great. I mean, common theme, right, between both you guys there. It's interesting because you always hear, not even just with, our industry, but just in AI in general, like it's coming for our jobs, right? Essentially. It's really it sounds like it's a force multiplier, right? You allow your teams to grow, work on bigger and better things, and really focus their time on high value and high leverage activities rather than um, doing a simple takeoff, essentially. So
Yeah.
awesome. Great insights. I think those are key valuable components to remember for any of our audience out there thinking through a switch. Just in summary, right, as we close out this thought leadership section of the webinar, 95% time saved on takeoffs and more time to prospect, refine your proposals, create job scripts, help in production reviews. I think the list is endless there that Jeremy and Mark went through as far as what you can do with that time saved. A lot of these data points here, all three of them actually have been collected from our 450, 500 customers that are on the platform today, in conversations and data gathering with them as well. So this is proven out to be pretty significant time savings. You'll also see, an average of a 20% lift in proposals sent out and resulting in a larger pipeline, so larger pipeline generation as well. And then, the last item here might be the most, I guess, impressive to me personally, because as you can increase your close rate, right? That's you're using the tools that you have to gain more sales and gain more revenue in your business without increasing your cost, right? And so 5% average on increased win rate with accurate site measurements, and also being not reactionary, but proactive on actually delivering the actual estimates and proposals in a quick fashion, even if you're in a tight time crunch in peak season, wherever that might be specifically. A lot of times we see that resulting from a business developer or a sales professional perspective to be roughly in that 100K additional revenue that's unlocked by these three inputs here. So just wanted to summarize our conversation so far. Want to take everybody through a quick demo of the actually live demo here of our aerial and blueprint side of our platform. So first we'll cover the aerial side. So we'll go ahead and pull up our platform here. You can see the user interface here for the aerial takeoff. So this is what Mark and Jeremy are using from an aerial takeoff perspective. It's pretty simple. You just you'll punch in an address, and it's tied to Google API, and it'll pull up the address, and you can click that. And once you click that, it will work through the process of dialing in that address and pulling up the actual aerial imagery. This imagery is typically about 3 times more dialed in than what you might see on a typical Google Maps. You can adjust the lot boundary as well. If it comes up, essentially the API is tied to tax records. So if you need to adjust the lot boundary at all, you can do that for the actual property. You just can click save there and go over to confirm lot boundary and review takeoff and click submit. And then once you do that, the system will go to work. It'll go through the AI modeling. It'll go through the QA process, and you'll wind up with this final takeoff here with all your features that you requested to be measured on your left. And the map is very dynamic and interactive. You can zoom in and you can make edits as well. So just a brief 4-step process with our aerial side of things. Would like to switch over to our blueprint side as well. This is one area of the auto measure platform that you're looking at that isn't as often talked about, but you have the ability to essentially name your project in this blueprint takeoff side of things. So we'll just punch in a little project name, and then since it's similar to entering an address for the aerial side, and then it will take you over to a page where you can actually upload your site plan or blueprint in that specific area for the drag and drop. And then you can also enter the scope of work, whether that might be irrigation, landscape install, site furnishings. There's a bunch of different specific scopes that you can put in there, but you can punch in your scope of work, click submit takeoff, and the AI will go to work in processing that blueprint. And then you'll wind up with a final takeoff here on the blueprint side as well. Similar user experience. We try to keep them similar because people are doing both aerial and blueprints. and it's a good quick look at what you'll get. It also has the ability to edit your blueprints as well, just as you can on the aerial side. So just wanted to take everybody through a quick live demo of that. So we do have an exclusive discount offer, limited time for just webinar attendees. Your annual subscription is just $99. And you can see there's a coupon code there. We'll also email that to all of the attendees. Offer ends December 15th. So if I'm doing my math correctly, that's next Friday. And you can also scan that QR code as well to book a demo with us. So appreciate everybody walking through that with us. Next, I think we're going to move over to Q&A session. So we've got some questions in the chat here that I want to talk through. I know we're running a touch tight on time, but I want to make sure we get to all of them. Jeremy, I want to maybe tackle this first one with you. The first question here is, while switching to AI measurement software, what challenges should I expect in terms of team adaptation and training as well?
So I think the only thing really to worry about is the hesitation from, like I said, the people that have been in the industry for a long time that are very used to doing the same thing the same way. But I don't think it's too difficult though, because the accuracy is going to prove itself. Shawn, the team at Attentive is very good about scheduling those demos and showing you how it works and answering questions. So a lot of that lift is already taken up from the beginning. Really, from a process side of it, it's really just setting up that system and getting that buy-in from everyone by being there to answer those questions and connecting them with the team at Attentive and stuff like that to make sure that those worries are kind of calmed a little bit.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate it. It kind of goes back to that trust factor. It sounds like, Jeremy, making sure that
100%.
you've got the buy-in from the team rather than just charging ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Mark, same question for you here. You know, while switching to AI, what challenges should you expect? And then, and what should you expect in terms of team adaptation and training?
I think it really depends on your process and how you set up your estimating to proposal process. For us, like I said, we were able to rebuild it and match it to our management software so that it was literally seamless. It spit it out. We matched the names in the template to our estimate template in our management software. So literally you just go into the takeoffs, and let's say that your lawn square footage was 150,412. You literally take that, you type it in, and it was almost seamless. And it allows us to basically it's very easy. It made it so easy that anybody can do it. There's really not a challenge with that. And as Jeremy touched on, if you have issues with the software, everybody at Attentive, when you submit a ticket, is super responsive. They can get on a Teams call, a Zoom call, can walk you through whatever the issue is. And like I said, I've been here since, I don't want to say the beginning, but I've been a customer for 3 years. And when we first started to where we are now, we've had discussions on, hey, can you fix this? Hey, can you fix that? And it's always been an open conversation. And that's what I've appreciated most about, Attentive, is that if I've run into a problem or I've had an issue where my team can adapt to it, we've been able to say, hey, can you help us fix this problem? And it's been not always a yes or a no. It's an open conversation. Say, hey, does this work? Hey, does this work? Maybe you can do this. To me, that's where I wouldn't expect there to be, a real issue with the training. It's pretty simple. And like I said, it's always been a two-way conversation if you do run into an issue with your current setup.
Yeah, well said. I feel like we've set ourselves up for the biggest failure or success by naming our company Attentive, right? It's certainly a culture that we have to we have to maintain, and we try to do it every day with our customers, making sure we understand your needs. Because I think the biggest thing, right, is like your guys' needs change out in the field. Like the industry is always evolving, technology is always evolving. So having a partner is truly important that looks past just the initial agreement, but more of the relationship. And I would say too, like one of the things that I've learned just kind of talking through like the training aspect, right, or the support aspect is, I was in the industry for 20 years. In the past year and a half, I've been on the tech side of things, helping the industry, right? And the biggest thing I've learned is like, do your due diligence, right? When you're deciding to make a switch. I think what Mark and Jeremy have both brought to the table today is like, help build trust with your team by building a process, right? That's one of the biggest things I took out of this. And before I joined Attentive, and I was a customer of Attentive, and it was the same thing, right? We sent 5 properties over and said, let's see how this thing does, right? And then I came back and I'm like, okay, I like it. And then we tested it a little bit further and built some trust with our ops team. But I think that's like 10% of it. I would say, the once you make the switch, having the right partner and having the right support past the switch, right, is a very important piece, because that's where you're going to spend most of your time on the relationship is, once you make the decision to move forward as well. So I guess Jeremy, maybe any final thoughts from you in regards to making a switch before we wrap up?
I recommend it for everybody. I mean, the time that it has saved my department and the capacity that has allowed us to grow. If you want to grow your business, and then I don't know how everybody else looks at it, but in Florida, we have the saying, and no pun intended, you either grow or you die, because with the turnover rate we have to keep growing. So this allows us to take on that capacity fairly easy. It's seamless. It integrates. I saw one other question: how does it integrate with other softwares? I won't shout out the software we use because I'm not a fan of it, but it's above my pay grade. So we built our template in our current software to match Attentives between both sides. So when we get our estimates, like I said, it matches perfectly. So integration is seamless from that aspect of it. But capacity is where we picked up the biggest. Not even looking at the dollars we saved. It's just being able to have that ability to grow at all times. I look at it as like comparing to having a server that's a hard server versus a cloud server. Hard server, if you want to grow more, you have to go buy another server. In the cloud, you make 2 clicks and you get more cloud space. It's similar to that. But the capacity, we can grow, and there's no, it's, hey Shawn, I need to increase this, or I need to increase that, and it's done the next day. There's no hiring process. There's no go finding the right person. There's no training that you really need to do. It's plug and play and grow.
Awesome. Great. Appreciate those closing thoughts there, Mark. Jeremy, how about you? Anything as we close?
Yeah. I think a lot of people with technology and stuff, everyone wants to kind of let everyone else jump off that cliff first and see how the ride goes. But in this industry, with the way that technology is progressing, like those who jump first are going to figure it out and get past any hurdles, and they're going to be able to use it for their exponential growth, and you're going to be stuck waiting and trying to see, and you're not going to catch on as fast as everyone else has. So I know some people are hesitant to try to make that switch and to try to fully embrace technology, but it's one of those things that you need to do it quickly and early on so you can be ahead of the pack when everyone starts going for it, because it will get there eventually.
Yeah. No, I 100% there, Jeremy. I think the Maldonado team and the Juniper team have been beautiful examples of just that, right? Like we're gonna figure it out as we go, not like let's get everything 100% baked. And I think like that's probably, just from my vantage point, looking out, across our landscape industry and looking out from a tech perspective as well, that's going to probably become a more important thing, as we go throughout the months and the years of like, we're not going to have everything figured out, but we can figure it out together. And I would say the other thing too, right, is like landscape industry is very tight. There's a lot of connections across companies as well. So talk to the other companies, right, that are doing something different. And I haven't ran into an instance where nobody wants to talk about what they're doing right. I think this webinar is a perfect example of that. You guys are, sharing best practices for industry, and certainly appreciate that as well. So we'll wrap up here. Jeremy, Mark, greatly appreciate both of you and your expertise in the industry, and actually pouring into the industry today for a good 45 or 50 minutes while we do it. So certainly thank everybody for joining as attendees as well today. We'll pull up one last slide, just a reminder as we close. We've got another webinar series starting next week, episode 1 of how to be the first and the most accurate bid out. Very excited about this. We've got our very own Jess Volpe, our customer success manager here at Attentive, joining me for a really great conversation. That'll happen next Thursday, December 14th, 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon. Feel free to mark your calendars. We'll have links on LinkedIn to join that Zoom and join that webinar, that scale up series. And then we'll also be sending out some emails to our attendees as well. So you can plan to join us next week on that as well. Jeremy, Mark, thank you as always. Greatly appreciate your time today and hope everybody has a great afternoon this Thursday. Take care.
Okay.